She is an internationally lauded technology entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Rekindle Learning, who continues to innovate ways in which organizations adapt and thrive across the globe. Please give a round of applause to Rapelang Rabana.
I want to chat to you about something very different today. I know we've heard a lot about platform technologies and innovation and what that's going to do for our businesses. But I want us to look at the other side of the equation today. I want us to look at what is our human response to the fourth industrial revolution. How do we develop people differently so that Africa's not left further behind with this next revolution? How do we sort of change the way we're doing things in terms of how we develop people? We need to obviously think much, much better about this. Otherwise, so many people risk becoming redundant or automated sort of out of their functions and their job roles. Let's recap the revolutions quite briefly as we know them. The first industrial revolution was really driven by water and steam and trying new manufacturing processes, while the second revolution was driven by electric power and how we do things at much greater scale. The next revolution was driven by electronics, information technology, to automate production. Now with this fourth industrial revolution, it blurs the lines between the physical, the digital, the biological, and brings unprecedented speed of information, huge volumes of knowledge at our fingertips. If we look at all of those revolutions, there's a couple of trends that we can pick up. The first is that there was always a lot of fear at the beginning, and then there was acceleration. And the less fear there was, the faster the acceleration. The second is that we used machines to do things that humans couldn't do as well, that they could do faster, better, more effectively. And finally, as a result of being replaced in certain tasks, we as human beings had to find new ways of being. Every revolution replaced functions that we thought we were better at and pushed us to direct our energies to something that we were actually better at. Until, of course, that was replaced by the next revolution. So who's being replaced now? We've seen autonomous vehicles replacing drivers. We've seen 3D printing replacing artisans, craftsmen. We've seen automation replacing manufacturing processes and financial services. We've seen nanotechnology replacing aspects of medicine. And basically, for anyone who is still left over, artificial intelligence is coming to get you, basically. When we look at our human response then to this situation, it doesn't look very promising when we look at our young people. And I know what you're thinking. These millennials, entitled, oblivious, dependent, how are they ever going to respond? When you look at this particular millennial, you'll have even more cause for worry.
As a millennial, I'm part of the most advanced crop of humans that our species has ever seen. I love to go out and meet up with friends so we can all sit together looking down at our phones and message other friends who aren't there with us. I like my friends' online personas better than their in-person personas, so I don't associate with them in person anymore. And I can say with confidence, I have literally never held eye contact with anyone. How old am I? I'm 55. According to my birth date, I'm 33. But as a millennial, I don't identify with that age. And it's discrimination to think that I'm as old as my age. Now I'm 65. Which means I should qualify to get Social Security checks every month now. When I order something off Amazon, it pisses me off that it takes until the next day for it to arrive. I mean, what kind of BS is that I have to wait almost 24 hours to get my new cold brew coffee maker? One time I started a petition against Amazon. Then I got tired of all the work it entailed before I sent it out to anyone. But still, when I was a kid, I always won the gold medal on the school's track team. I was only the 18th fastest kid, but I always won the gold medal. So did everyone else on the team, and the opposing team, because we were all the best. What that taught me is that hard work and determination are severe forms of abuse. I learned that I don't need to put effort into being great at something because I can just have people tell me that I'm great at that something instead. I'm great at everything I do.
Okay, so maybe it's not all that bad, but are we really, really ready for this new world that we're creating? And if we don't change something dramatically, will we really be able to address the new challenges that are coming our way? There may be a bright side to all of this. There may just be another way to look at it. It may just be an opportunity to be more human again. But are we ready? In ancient Greece, everyone had slaves. Even poor people had slaves. And there was a thriving culture of arts and science because people were free to focus on the creative things in life. That gives us an interesting view through which to view the fourth industrial revolution. If we are removed from the need to do laborious tasks, could we possibly thrive more? Could we possibly become more human through the fourth industrial revolution? Could we move from being doers to being thinkers and creators? Could the fourth industrial revolution, like all the other revolutions before it, force us to direct our energies to something else, to something that we are actually better at? Could we become human beings instead of human doers with this revolution? You know, artificial intelligence is not all that amazing. Look at this site trying to be human. It's essentially an AI-powered site that's trying to generate motivational quotes using automated artificial intelligence tools. I think even carte blanche could be more inspiring than that some days. So there are things that humans can do better than anything else. And with the fourth industrial revolution, we need to develop different skills and capabilities within people and leverage those unique selling points. Some of these unique selling points are articulated in frameworks like this Future Work 2020 skills framework that identifies particular things that human beings are going to need to be able to do in the future. They pull out different skills like design mindset, the ability to see the big picture, to be able to balance out multiple socioeconomic objectives to achieve the desired outcome. They look at things like social intelligence, the ability to build rapport, make connections. They look at sense making, the ability to look at unstructured data, organize it in a way that makes sense. They talk about skills like virtual collaboration, being able to connect with people across cultures and still be able to build sort of meaningful relationships. These are the kind of skills that we're seeing as coming to be more important in the future. Just about a decade ago already, Daniel Pink in his book, A Whole New Mind, coined the statement that we need to shift people if we're going to survive automation from the dominance of left brain or analytical brain function to become whole brain functioning human beings. He listed 6 attributes that he believed whole brainers display more than sort of single-side or analytical left brain functions. And he talked about skills like symphony, the ability to see the big picture and to synthesize lots of information. He talked like skills like meaning, the ability to identify purpose in your life and direct yourself through your own goals and aspirations. He talked about skills like story or narrative, the ability to come up with a narrative about things and products and services beyond the normal, boring old facts. In his words, he said, whole brainers will inherit the future. Carol Dweck, in her book, Mindset, investigates the causes of success and achievement. And she distinguishes between a fixed and a growth mindset. And she basically says that those with a fixed mindset believe that ability is something that you have or you don't. You're born with it or you don't have it. And there's very little that you can do while you're here to actually build that ability. People with growth mindsets, however, believe that they can nurture their basic talents through hard work and dedication, through applied learning, practice, applying good strategies, and that you can be able to build competence in most things through those kind of efforts, whether in your personal life, family life, managing and leading a team, leading a whole organization. The fixed mindset implies an external locus of control. It implies that life has largely already happened to you, and all you can do is sort of react to that. Whereas a growth mindset implies an internal locus of control. It suggests that you can set a goal and direct your life in a particular direction. Growth mindsets will thrive in the future because they look at new challenges, things they don't know. They look at having to learn new things with openness and enthusiasm. Most of our educational and sort of human development systems that we have at schools and universities are really designed with previous revolutions in mind. Isolated learning, homogeneous teaching, standardized testing, content-heavy, knowledge-driven sort of learning systems. And if you look carefully, if you look really carefully, it is evident that a great deal of what we do now is actually to stuff a lot of content and knowledge into people. Focusing on our memory and analytical sort of learning abilities, things that were our defining feature in previous industrial revolutions, but will cease to be going forward, because that's not what separates us now from other species, from machines. In this new world, where the kind of attributes espoused by the whole new mind, growth mindset, the future work skills 2020 are what define the needs of the future. What good is a CV going to be? What good are IQ tests really going to mean? It's not very much. Looking at the kinds of skills that we need in the future, we can already envision the type of human being that could thrive in this new fourth industrial revolution. The kind of human being who would be an entrepreneur and an innovator, a creator, a shaper, a self-sufficient net contributor in this world. I am going to call this new type of person a response-able human being. The question then is how? How do we develop people with those whole brain mindsets, with those growth mindsets, with those future skills of 2020? Unfortunately, with all the developments that we have in modern science today, I think we don't have a generally understood language in enough detail that really helps us understand how we deliver this at scale. I find that the discourse on human development is not particularly sophisticated. We talk a bit about send people to school, get an education, get professional training, exposure, some experiences, as if we all mean the same thing by those terms. And it's not actually often aligned in our thinking. For the gravity of the task at hand, these ideas seem somewhat superficial and don't convey the complexities of the human psyche, the complexities of the human mind, and providing it the right stimulus to deliver deep learning that will create those response-able human beings. We need then a different approach. In the R&D work that we've been doing at Rekindle Learning, one of the more fascinating approaches I've seen is that done by the A2B transformation movement, developed by local entrepreneur and Ashoka fellow Vivian Schultz. This internationally groundbreaking work captures in a very simple and practical framework some very complex neurobehavioral concepts on how to develop ordinary people into those thrivers of the 4IR, and how to take them from A to B, literally. This approach falls into an area of occupational science, an area of science that looks at how well people cope with and respond to the external stimulus and challenges around them. Things like the tasks we do from work, managing and leading people, raising families, building relationships. It goes a step further to coin a new phrase called occupational intelligence. And this intelligence measures holistically how we cope and respond to the external stimulus and challenges that come our way, and how well we can deal with those external stimuli and responses. So we call it responsiveness in a way, or responsibility. And in the short time I have with you today, I want to distill 3 key pillars of these kind of approaches and how they're going to be fundamentally different in how we develop those 4IR thrivers. The first principle of this kind of approach is that we need a new scale. CVs, IQ tests, standardized testing doesn't show us the abilities that we actually need in people today, like whole brain function, growth mindset, internal locus of control, the skills of the future of 2020. Occupational intelligence is ultimately the chemistry of all the workings in the mind, and intelligence is working collectively to create an effective response to a challenge or a stimulus coming from the outside. And this response can be measured on a scale. On the board, I've provided you with a snippet of that scale. It's 5 aspects of it, but it can sort of have about 12 levels on that scale already. In the old world, we put so much emphasis into stuffing people with content, with knowledge, and that was the primary indicator of someone's sort of ability to retain it. But in the new research done by A2B methodology, they found that as much as only 20% of technical knowledge contributed to someone's ability to respond adequately to a task. This is a task in work or riding a bicycle or raising a child. And the rest of ability essentially sits in all these other intelligences that contribute to response ability. Have you ever hired someone who has all the education but doesn't quite deliver the work? Their CV on paper is everything you need, but they cannot do or act their talk. This is because we're not measuring responsive or collective ability to respond. Let's have a look at the scale a little bit more. When you hire a recent graduate, ideally they're at the A2 level, the orange bit there now, where they know enough about their role to know that they are not yet fully competent, largely because of a lack of experience. Whereas the highly competent manager, the one who's been at the role for quite some time and knows all the tasks back to front, would be at an A3 level. They don't, however, at this A3 level, operate independently. They perform well within a structure, but remove that structure and they won't be able to continue to perform. At the B levels of the scale, we have people that can respond independently. They can operate without a given structure and demonstrate entrepreneurial ability. But to get there, they have to be applying an internal locus of control. They have to be displaying whole brain function behavior. Assessing where people are on these scales doesn't require an MRI scan, so don't imagine big hospitals with big machines, but it can actually be observed through targeted questions and practical exercises, or what they commonly call in the program occupational intelligence assessments, which is a combination of questions and exercises. We know the old adage, you cannot manage what you do not measure. This would be the kind of skill you could use to measure responsiveness towards a particular task, like the kind of tasks that you would find on someone's job profile, from the ability to build new relationships, to write proposals, to manage teams. The same person could have different levels of responsiveness across various tasks, and you can better truly understand their abilities. Responsiveness is really our most basic human function. From the time we are born, if you think carefully, we start responding. As children, we start responding to hunger, to fear, and over the years and decades, our responses become more and more sophisticated, or at least they should. The concept of responsiveness or responsibility integrates all these principles of growth mindset, whole brain function, internal locus of control, the USPs of being a human being, because the degree to which you have all of those skills ultimately contributes to your ability to respond better, to respond adequately to the task or challenge that arises in your work environment. So by measuring responsiveness, we can measure them all. Let me give you a simple illustration of how locus of control could be assessed. And this is a very simple example for the purpose of our session today. You could, if you wanted to assess someone's locus of control, ask a question like, how do you get a cold? So think about that. How do you get a cold? There will be a group of people that will say, it's been cold, it's been raining, someone else in my office was really sick and made me sick, and that's why I have a cold. And they would be operating from an external locus of control with respect to their health. There'll be another group of people that could say, I haven't been eating well, I haven't been sleeping all that well, I really haven't been looking after myself, and that's why I have a cold. And those will be people that are operating from an internal locus of control with respect to their health. They believe, or they have drawn the links between their actions and the end outcome, and they believe they can influence it. And you'd be able to apply that to many sort of other situations. The second pillar of this kind of approach that is critical is that we need a deeper understanding of the brain. Human beings won't be paid for their mechanical output for much longer, but for the quality of their thinking. In previous times, before this revolution, the task drove the man. The task drove the man. We used men for mechanical means, and we could easily swap one out and replace them with another. To get better results, we knew how to power up the machine more, and we knew how to dangle a carrot and swing a stick to motivate the man. In this new world, the man drives the task. The man drives the task. So we need to understand the occupational intelligence of that human and how to enhance it in order to achieve better results, and move them up that OI, or occupational intelligence scale, that I showed you earlier. So knowledge of the brain function should not be left to neurologists and enthusiasts, but for anyone who has an influence over people, every parent, teacher, manager, leader. And if we don't understand those shortcomings, we won't be able to develop people better, how the synthesis and analytical parts of our brains work together, and the shortcomings of the lower brain that can hinder progress in people's development. When we assess people's performance today, there are usually two big questions that we ask ourselves. The first question is, are they doing the task right? Are they doing the task according to norms and best standard practices or global best practice? Do they have the ability to do the tasks right, in the right order? And that usually requires a high consciousness in the analytical part of the brain. The second question that we often need to ask ourselves is, are they doing the right task? Are they considering the whole context? Are they considering the whole big picture? Are they focusing on the 20% that will yield 80% of the desired outcome? An ability to work on the right question or right task and to see that big picture entails a high level of consciousness in the synthesis part of the brain. Whole brain function means that you're able to swap around between the two all the time, back and forth. And someone who can execute a task and write that great technical assignment, once you've given them the right direction and the focus to focus on, but it usually goes in the wrong direction when they don't have that direction or focus, usually has a low level of consciousness in the synthesis part of their brain. Someone who comes up with fabulous ideas really hits the nail on the head every time with those great ideas, but come to produce documents and plans that correlate and correspond to those great ideas, falls short, is often someone who has a lower level of consciousness in the analysis part of their brain. Either way, they're operating from a single-sided brain dominance. And while we are all born with dominance and will continue to have a dominance, we all have to also develop whole brain function ability. It is important to be able to understand how the lower brain function can also skew perceptions in how we interpret the world around us, and how it can trigger behaviors like fight and flight syndrome, impulses, egotistical self-preservation, victim mindsets, egotistic behavior, or an inability to respond altogether. In order to be able to develop people and move them up the stages on that scale requires us to understand how different parts of the brain respond at each point in that scale. The person who is unresponsive or stuck in a particular stage of their development usually doesn't know that they're stuck. And developing people means that we need to crack them into a higher level of consciousness and manage the lower brain's anxiety as we do so. Have a look at this video that shows us that being stuck and unresponsive is usually a state of deep unawareness and low level of consciousness.
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
Help! Help! Help!
I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
So that's a funny way to look at low or weak levels of responsiveness, but it's not always so obvious in life. Now for the third pillar. So exactly how do you move people up that OI scale? How do you develop their responsiveness and occupational intelligence so that we can perform in this new world? In his book, David Grock, he talked about how the brain learns when it struggles. But not all struggles are good struggles. If someone was trying to learn how to ride a bicycle and you put them on the middle of a busy road with lots of cars going about, would they ever learn to ride a bike, or would they be so overwhelmed they never try again? So the key then is to identify the right struggle or the well-pitched task just above their current level of ability so that you can stretch them out of their comfort zone and develop their neurobehavioral functions. And so through a series of well-pitched stimuli, well-chosen struggles, well-pitched tasks, people can develop whole brain function, internal locus of control, whole B status in the A to B framework. And this translates into an ability to be more response-able with respect to a particular task. Understanding how the right struggle grows a person's neurology is pretty key and better positions all of us to know how to develop people. Let's say someone was at A1 in their level of development, and this is the stage where they are unconsciously incompetent, let's say with respect to writing a report. So this is the kind of person who is so certain and oblivious about life because they actually don't know what they don't know. And it took me a long time to realize that talking at, preaching at someone at this stage doesn't get you very far. And the best way to actually crack them into consciousness is to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Not literally, of course, but in a safe environment so that they can actually have their own moment of cracking into consciousness. So this can be done really by, instead of writing that report and delivering it to the client, maybe to deliver it to an internal team so that they have the actual experience of the misalignment themselves, so they can have that moment of cracking into consciousness. If someone is at A2 level of the A to B scale and is trying then to get to the next level, this is someone who is already consciously sort of conscious of their incompetence. And at this point, it's critical to be able to provide them with support so that they don't trigger self-preservation and victim mindset and defensive mechanisms that often occur. So at this stage, you provide supporting tools like clarity on the end goal, understanding of the series of small steps one needs to take to reach that end goal, operating procedures and frameworks, the ability to shadow someone and follow someone who knows something better, all in an effort to facilitate I can moments. And the absence of this kind of support is what entrenches victim mindset mentality indefinitely, and why it's so critical to understand why someone is at that point. The goal of the whole framework is to get people from A to B levels of responsiveness, where they're at a stage of consciousness where they can be more independent and demonstrate an internal locus of control. These are the thrivers of the fourth industrial revolution. Sadly, only a very small percentage of South Africans or children get nurtured through a series of well-pitched tasks, well-chosen struggles throughout their life to arrive at the point where they can reach a B level by adulthood. In a study done by A2B in 2011 in South Africa, they found that as much as 84 South African adults continue to operate at A-level stages of responsiveness, meaning they operate from a external locus of control, a mindset of dependency, easily stimulated lower brain function, and generally low or poor levels of responsiveness to the challenges they face in the world around them. The ATB framework has been used in various organizations, NGOs and corporates. And typically you use it to, one, assess the operating environment or the ecosystem of the company and how well it empowers or disempowers people in the organization. And secondly, you use it to assess individual people's occupational intelligence so that they can better understand their levels of responsiveness. One particular organization that's used it is Clothing Bank, an NGO that supports hundreds of young women by training them to become entrepreneurs and run their own clothing retail shops in the townships. Initially, when they started the program, they struggled to get people to complete the year-long program and actually run successful programs. They thought that, if a woman has 4 mouths to feed, they must want to complete this course, they must want to run this business successfully. But their throughput rates were pretty low until they started applying the ATB methodology. And essentially now, when they look at selection programs and how to recruit people, they assess for things like locus of control. And they are able to identify women with close to or have an internal locus of control so that they know they can survive this program. And that if they don't do that, they know how to change their program to be able to suit someone at a particular lower stage in that ATB methodology. And through that, they've been able to achieve throughput rates in the 90s because of changing how they assessed people. So imagine graduate and learnership programs applied this kind of thinking. As an entrepreneur and as a leader, these new approaches have illuminated my understanding of why I continue to struggle with individuals who show tremendous potential but never quite make it, who continue to remain demotivated, passive, manipulative, conniving, and stuck in their victim mindset. I am still a scholar of these approaches and definitely not the expert, but for the first time I understand how to move dependent people into response-able managers. And for the first time I see a path about how to do that and develop people. I've also found that there are many successful people who are deeply unconscious of how they got there. We are often unaware of the moments of I can moments and well-pitched struggles that were afforded to us through life. And this is a natural outcome because even in the higher stages of the ATB model, we have unconscious competence and everything is intuitive to us. So because it's hard to break down in your mind how you got there, it's easy to say things like hard work, a bit of effort, and a lot of luck is all you need, to kind of make it in life. But that kind of superficial understanding doesn't really help us, because if you believe that effort and hard work was all that was needed to make it in life, you believe that those that haven't made it didn't apply those things. And considering the huge history of have and have-nots in South Africa, that doesn't contribute productively to economic development and race relations in this country. With the 13-year unemployment high and GDP growth sort of slumping at this point, we need a different way to be able to pull the people that are living under less than 3,500 rands a month out of that space. And a new approach that delivers the kind of principles that I've been talking about will be critical for us to develop people differently. And we can use this to address so many of the issues that I believe we're facing in our society today, that we can develop response-able people. And if we do that, if we are to remain relevant in this world of our creation, we need to prepare for it using these different kinds of methodologies. And we need to do that right now. And if we get it right, I believe we might, just might, learn how to be more human again. Thank you very much.